Welcome back to the Humble Rising podcast. I am so thrilled that I get to share with you a special and timely conversation with the one and only Diana Maldonado. She is a best-selling author, speaker, business strategist, and former Texas state representative. She is the CEO of Maldonado Strategies, and her sharp insight for pinpointing incongruencies combined with her method for listening and for collaborating helps organizations design and implement innovative solutions to accelerate their big vision goals and become the leading edge. As the first Latina elected to represent Williamson County in the House of Representatives, she advocated for education, business, and safe communities. In that role, she authored or co-authored 88 bills. I know we talk about this in the episode. I'm like, 88? What did that require? I asked her about that. So stay tuned for her answer. She co-authored or authored 88 bills and was named Freshman of the Year by her colleagues. Through her collaboration with key stakeholders, she secured nearly $16 million for education, $10 million for road expansion, and additional funds for renewable energy initiatives and walking trails and parks. She served as the secretary for the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, Defense and Veterans Affairs, and on the coveted State Affairs Committee. Today, Diana's focus is helping women get elected to public office to bring parity, voice, and representation to the halls of democracy. Her uniquely curated daily lessons in the Candidate School, which we talk about in this episode, will help unlock the secrets to becoming a powerful, persuasive, and authentic candidate while winning over the hearts and minds of voters. Her unmatched expertise to empowering women in politics helps women plan their next move strategically. In the Candidate School course, she shares everything she wished she'd known during her campaign journey, and even before she started her own campaign. From mastering your candidate identity to managing money, yes, those money stories, they'll come back and bite you, to managing money, policy, and power strategically and ethically. The Candidate School program helps you really navigate the political arena with confidence. By completing Candidate School, participants gain the skills, the strategy, and the clarity to run a successful, purpose-driven campaign and win. Diana is also a global marathon runner with races in Tokyo, Berlin, London, Paris, which is close to my heart, having run Boston twice. Maybe one day, Diana, I will do Tokyo and Paris and London and Berlin, but I love that she is a marathon runner and she is a mom of 2 adult children and spends time with her granddaughter where she taps into her greatest joy. And in this conversation, Diana and I talk about her journey into politics and her mission to empower women to run for office. We dive into her background in state government and her experiences running for public office in Texas, including all the challenges and the triumphs along the way. I specifically ask about how it all happened. And she walks us through how she in particular was tapped to run for state rep in a heavily conservative Republican district as a Democrat. We also discuss the importance of women and Latinos in political leadership, understanding the legislative process, and how the Candidate School, her program, aims to prepare women to run for office effectively and to discover what you might not know, but need to know about the process. Diana and I really could have talked for hours. I find her story incredibly inspiring and trailblazing in many ways. And as I think about how I can personally do something about what is happening in our country right now, I'm leaning more into how I can help women, especially women of color and Latinas run for office as we approach midterm elections in 2026. There is a lot to think about. There is a lot of work to do. And as Deanna says, it's a call to action. Like this time that we're experiencing, the chaos, the overwhelm, the erosion of our democracy, and the challenge to our Constitution. We can sit here waiting for things to change, but we have to take the reins and get to work. And I know many of you are already in the work, but we have to continue the work and bring other people along with us. I am so thankful that Deanna re-energized me in that regard, because all of the chaos, the dismantling and rolling back of so much forward progress over decades, and the abuse of power has been really difficult to witness, to say the least, especially as a lawyer, where we take an oath to defend and protect the Constitution. And it's also very difficult as a Latina and a woman of color. So my hope is that you find this conversation with Deanna reinvigorating as well, that it gives you hope, that it gives you a renewed sense of purpose. Here is my conversation. Diana, thank you so much for being here on the podcast with me today. I am very much looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Adavi. I appreciate the invitation. I look forward to chatting with you.
So Diana, let's start with your story. I know you have a very compelling, special story. So I'd love for you to share with people your story, your mission, and what led you to do what you do today.
Okay. I think it goes back as that my lifelong work has been about helping people to rise to that next level of professional growth. And on the business side is helping organizations build sustainability by looking at their infrastructures. And that has been my lifelong work, throughout my career. And that's what has attracted me to work with certain organizations, or attracted me to work with individuals that I just see their potential and to get them to that next level. And I found myself probably around 2-3 years ago where I was like, what do I want to do next?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that I had given enough, or not enough, the right amount, and had seen the successes in other organizations, but I felt like a calling or a void, and not like a negative void, but a void of opportunity to what is it that I want to do next. And the one thing that kept coming back to me is, if I could run again, how would I do it again for office? Because now in our current political landscape, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of uncertainty. When you have more legislation and policies that go against women and women's rights, that's definitely a call to action. And then also with communities of color. I mean, I'm a Latina in Texas, so while we are one of the largest growth demographically, our current legislature, our current leaders do not represent the needs and the interests of Latinos either. So that led me to put pen to paper and think of a way to continue to empower people, whether individually or through organizations, to where they can have a voice or take that journey in running for public office. And that's where I curated the candidate school course.
Vanessa, so tell us more about how, even before you made this, it sounds like this career position. What were you doing before that? And, what kind of led you to do that work, even before this recent career transition and this mission that you're on now?
Yes. So I come, as far as context and background, I have over 23 years in state government service at the state controller's office. And in Texas, that's the purse strings for the state of Texas. So in that time, I literally started when I was in my early 20s. And at that time, I was obviously young, had a 3-year-old, and was separated. And a high school friend of mine who happened to work for Governor Ann Richards at the time, he said, Deanna, come work at the state. You're not going to get rich, but you'll have stability, you'll have benefits. And I told him, okay, I think I'll do it, but I'm only going to work there 5 years. And, the joke's on me because I ended up retiring from there. But it was, while it was a very slow progress, because obviously in the bureaucratic government, it's not anything exciting, but it is something very meaningful with regards to impacting change. So I grew up there. I slowly climbed the ladder, but there was definitely a ceiling that I could not get past. And I would never get past. So I started also looking for what other ways to what other areas that I could go in my professional career to be able to grow and help and impact. And along the way, the opportunity came to run for office, and that in itself was a big challenge, because as someone who's divorced, a single parent with a teen and a preteen, I mean, it's not the ideal category to be able to run for office, because and a lot of people don't know this, Aravi, but running for office is literally a hobby. You literally have to be financially independent, wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
You have a spouse that's going to support you during the time that you're in political office. You potentially work for a law firm or on council. You have your own business that can financially sustain you while dedicate your time in public office. And I didn't have any of those. So while there's some wonderful people who are doing good in the world, the world of politics financially is not as open for people who want to impact change and to be able to have that work come to fruition.
Wait, Deanna, is that on the local level and the state and federal level? Like you really do have to have your own.
Yeah, I would say more on the local level, because for school board races, it's a volunteer elected
Yeah.
position. For city council, it's a give and take, but even then, it's not a salary.
Yeah.
I would say for the county, like in Texas, for the county commissioners, yes, now you have a respectable salary of probably around 150,000. But
Okay.
I'll give you an example. As a state legislator in Texas, and it still varies. I mean, it varies all over across the nation, but it's still not a salary that I would say any legislator across the nation can make a living off of.
Right.
But I got paid 7,200 a year. So I would have a take-home pay of $600.
Yeah. So it's not a full, yes, it can't be your primary way of living.
Yeah. Where somebody who's financially independent as far as wealthy and has a source of financial means that they can go and serve and not be deterred by that, stress and fear of financial obligations that you still have. And so they probably go with a clear mind while you're trying to juggle, two different worlds at the same time, which is what I did while I was in public office.
Okay. Wait, so you ran for office.
I ran for office.
You got into public office, and then what happened?
Yes. So I did 4 campaigns, 2 on the local level at school board. Latino leaders were looking for that next generation of leaders to support. And so when I spoke with them, along with some other potential candidates, they said, yeah, you have a resume that we'd like to move forward. We'd like to support you to run for the local school board. And at the time, our school district, I think it still is, but was considered one of the best school districts in the state of Texas. We have over 1,000 school districts in Texas. And Williamson County in subsequent years was the fastest growing county in the nation. So there was a lot of movement. Like right now, I'll give an example. Samsung is in our backyard. Dell is in our backyard. So there's a lot of technology and manufacturing as a result of Austin, just being, right right next door. So I did the two campaigns, and then there was a pocket of time where the legislature wasn't funding public education, that's the mantra that I ran on, because to me, education is the greatest equalizer with regards to anybody who takes the time and has a support to have access to good quality education. And the district that I ran in was a conservative Republican stronghold. The current legislator had been in office for almost 2 decades, and he was chairman of the powerful transportation committee, but he had fallen out of favor with the Republican Party at the time. So there was a really, really small window for the Democratic Party then to take action. And in that, I was again, the leaders were looking who has name recognition, who has evidence in the community that they've done, good or bad. And so again, the Democratic Party chair said, it's you, like, because we want to go ahead and run you. And so I left my second term on the school board then to run for the state seat, a state representative. And it was
But Deanna, how are you tapped though? So, and because this is for me, I actually don't know any of this, and I'm sure people are wondering, when you were on the school board and then they're looking for people who will fit a certain profile or who would be a great candidate to take advantage of that window of opportunity, how do they know it's you? How do you connect with them? How are these decisions made? How do you get access to these people?
You are asking precisely the right questions as to why I curated this course. So thank you. And please stop me, because to me, I've been doing politics for, almost 2 decades. So please stop me. So, inadvertently or subconsciously, I was building a resume. I mean, I was in state government, over 20 years. So that's like a little plus too. And then I worked for the best state agency. So I was lining up some things unbeknownst to me that would have a good, profile for somebody to say, we don't know her, but we like what she's on paper. I mean, you will get vetted in so many ways. It's just like it gets kind of ugly and it gets so impersonal, but you will get vetted in so many ways where, like, oh, well, she's new to the community, or well, she's in Austin but not in Round Rock, or people will find ways to say no before they say yes. So what I kept doing is I kept my focus of education. So to me, it's like, I'm not going to grovel and beg and chase you. Now, early on, when I didn't know enough, to some extent, it's like I was trying to convince people to say, and because, as far as Latinos, we do that, like, I'm going to convince you, I'm going to work twice as hard. And, and I went through that period as well in my younger years. But at the same time, I had to stop and say, I'm going to burn myself out. And I just started to going back to, in my formative years, that what got me there, and it was education. So as long as I kept thinking about education and finding ways to collaborate with people wanting to have a conversation on education, safe communities, slowly but surely, then I started building my own army or allies, so that then they in turn could talk to so-and-so and this other leader and people who had the big pocketbooks, because I knew that I couldn't do it alone. And I also talked to people, and literally it was just a handful of people, because a lot of people that looked like me weren't in public office. So to me, trust was a big issue, because I didn't know if I would speak to somebody, then they would go turn around and give my information to other folks. And at the same time, like I said, there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me. So I really had a hard time and went through this process alone. But I had to dig deep as to what do I know and what can I feel confident and trust myself to carry forward. And then
Mhm.
slowly but surely that kind of evolved and kind of showed people like, no, she's not backing off, or she's not, and I've been more of a person who's more just even keeled to say, and while I'm scared inside, I come off as even keeled, and to let people know where I'm focused on. And so when I first, so if I'll go back to the school board, people didn't know me and they did question, well, is she really invested in the community? And
Mm.
fair enough, because I was probably fairly new, maybe 4 years into the community, but my decades of service in state government uh, was the strength to say, oh, well, she knows people at the Capitol. She knows people in Austin. So then she can be the voice for us. So that's how you kind of like, figure out where your strengths are, and
Mhm.
then say, okay, if this is lacking, I don't have to prove to people like, I'm going to work hard on this. I goes, no, I know that this is where I'm weak on, but this is where my attention and focus is. But and we had successes through my leadership. We were able to pass on the school board. We were able to pass a $349 million bond, because I like I say, at the time, we were the fastest growing county, and so we had to pass a bond. We had filled the bond the year before. And the worst thing that you can do is try to pass a bond the next year. You have to
Mm.
wait like 3, 4 years. But we just didn't have that, time was not on our side. We needed to build those schools. So what we did, I said, okay, well, let's bring the naysayers to the table, because we want to learn from them why they did not like the bond. And that's one of the things that taught me when I was at the state controller's office, is how to solve a problem in different ways and not to go linearly.
Mm.
And just up until recently, I've been doing some meditation with thought leaders, and my new mantra is, how can I create this? So if I'm stumped on something that I'm like, oh, I thought it was going to happen this way. So I start thinking, how can I create this? Because at the end of the day, I need to find a solution. But
Mm.
at this point in time, my mind is looking at it in one way. So I
Yes.
invite the universe to help me create it in a different way. But and with that success, obviously it was a big win for the city, and for the district, uh that it allowed, and we had conversations. I mean, I had to say no to on some issues, and had to say no to pay raises, had to say no on things that were very dear to people, and to families. But like what I would say, we don't have the money. I can't, pull it out of a rabbit hat. I mean, I had to be realistic, and be realistic with our voters and our community about what we could do and not do. It's not to
Mm.
say that that program wasn't worthy of it. If you just don't have the money, you don't have the money.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so in having those hard conversations along with the win of that bond, catapulted me to say, hey, she's done right for the community. We're going to then support her on her bid for state rep.
Wait, so
Um,
Dana, you were the one who wanted to be a state rep. Like you kind of put it out there that, hey, I'm thinking of running for state rep. Is that what happens? Like you put feelers out and then people come to you?
well, so yeah, so the rumblings started happening. Like I said, that the current state rep was losing favor. You're gonna really like this story, and it's in my memoir. But so again, I'm president of the school board. We're at an education foundation gala. I invite the Democratic County Party chair, who to
Mm.
me, he was like a Theo or a father figure to me. He was always looking out for me,
Mm.
and just
Okay.
really, being my eyes and ears. So I said, hey, Richard, come over to the gala, what have you. So, but I noticed that he was, now we knew that this was happening, And I thought, okay, I wonder what's going to come up. And then I said, hey, Richard, you're a little distracted. What's going on? He goes, well, I'm really thinking of a candidate. I mean, we just cannot lose this opportunity. And I goes, okay. So we talked more. And at the time I was, dating a guy who was also a community leader, small business owner. And he sat on a couple of boards here in the Round Rock area. And so then he quickly starts kind of thumping his chest, thinking that it was him, that he was gonna, my boyfriend. And it's like, and
that's so typical to be
I
like,
know.
oh, man. It's like, no.
Yeah, because he like was on the Y board and the Round Rock Chamber and this and that. But and all along he had been feeling jealous because I was getting the attention of being school board president and being the elected leader. So we would walk in like to an event, people would come to me, not to him. And so as I'm talking to Richard, and I let him and Richard talk, and I'm just kind of drinking my glass of wine, just kind of waiting for them to kind of catch up to me. And then finally Richard goes, oh my God, the answer has been in front of me all this time. You're the one we need to run. And he literally left the gala to go make some phone calls. And he goes, I'm going to have somebody call you. So be on the lookout for a call. I'm like, okay. And then he just literally kind of like left us stunned. And then my boyfriend goes, what are you doing? And I said, well, what do you mean? What am I doing? And he goes, it's my turn to run. I'm going to be it. And he goes, no, you're not. He goes, I'm going to run. And we're literally kind of having a little argument. And
how long did that relationship last after that?
It was the beginning of the end. Well, and at the end there, I said, you know what? May the best woman win. And I said, go ahead and run. May the best woman win. And then, we shortly broke up after that. But to me, it's like, I'm not going to let a guy just, who doesn't have the qualifications. And it's like, how many times do we as women let somebody else older, let somebody else, if it's a guy who does not have the qualifications. So let me kind of clear that up. Or like, I was not going to be subservient to my boyfriend just because he's a guy. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And to me, I've always been about championing women and championing women's issues. And I felt like, nope, not backing up. I mean, I put too much work into my, public life to where I want to take that next step.
But before that moment, Deanna, like before that moment where the chair says, oh, it's you, it's been in front of me this whole time. Had you thought that before he said that? Have you thought, hey, I'm thinking about this. Like this would, maybe one day I could do this. Like had that been in your mind at all?
It was during the school board meetings, probably in the last 4 or 6 school board meetings, we kept saying, hey, we can only do so much because we're not getting funded in public education. And just, side conversation like, well, what is this ledge doing? Why can't they move things forward? And so it was kind of like probably a very organic, subtle conversation that probably at one of these late night school board meetings, like something has to be done, something has to happen. But at that time, I didn't know that this was happening, that the Republican Party for Williamson County was cratering. And like I said, it was like this window of opportunity where we say that the stars were aligned, and we just have to make sure that we like get on board and minimize our mistakes and see it through.
So the chair makes the calls. He leaves the gala, makes some calls. You're the person he wants to run. Then what happens next? I'm like on the edge of my seat. I'm like, oh, this is like, I'm so looking forward to reading your memoir. Like, I need to know all these stories. So what happened?
Yeah. So it's almost like a telenovela, because it's like, oh, I get it like in a little span with my soon-to-be ex-boyfriend, and here we are, in a very fast growing district, like, we kind of can't keep up with our community and what have you. So I do. I get a call from Robert Jones, and at the time he was the director of Annie's List, which is in Texas, it's Annie's List, and the national organization is Emily's List. And they help progressive women get elected to public office. Now, at that time, they were concentrating on state office and congressional. And Annie's List was still new. I think it was like 3 years old. They were also getting their feet on the ground, getting their visibility as an organization. And so Robert calls me and like, hey, I got word from the county party chair for me to have a conversation with you, blah, blah, blah. And so we did, and then we had subsequent conversations. They also tested me because I was the first person of color that they endorsed to run for state office.
Ever? Wait, Dana, ever?
Well, subsequently now, but at that time I was the very, very first person of color, because they had a lot of white females that they would endorse, but I was the first person of color that they endorsed as, on their campaign and what have you. And I recall saying, like, this is a big jump from school board to state rep. Now, while I could do it very nimbly on the school board side, it's a smaller world. It takes less money, a smaller team. And he goes, the only way I can run is that I have an endorsement or a large organization supporting me to get the word out, because I'm not going to do it alone. This is way, way too much. So that was my stipulation, before putting my hat in the ring and then going forward. I mean, there were some other caveats and logistics that I had to consider, and they said, and he went back, talked to his board and the team, and they said, okay, yeah, we want to move forward with you. And I said, okay, well, I want to move forward with you too.
Wait, Dana, but you mentioned that they tested you. What do you mean?
So that, because a lot of people, and here's again, it'll go back to the course, because a lot of people want to run, but they haven't even thought it through of what it takes to run. I see a lot of people have very passionate conversations with their friends or at a conference or an event, and then they turn around that weekend and go file without even having put thought about how they're going to go about doing it. And subsequently they crater and have a bad experience. And even though they're a great candidate, they just didn't think it through. So part of it, they had me two stories. Again, on the school board, I think the most I had raised was $3,000, $5,000 to win the race. And even then, as a Latina, asking people for money, like, it's like,
that's tough. That's tough.
Yes.
It goes against like everything.
It's like, I have to ask people for money. Like, yeah, do you want to win? I goes, yes.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay, so we're going to put you with the team right now. They're going to give you a list. And so I would go during my lunch hour, in between work and after work, and get on the phone. And I'm like,
oh, you had to make phone calls and ask for money?
Yeah. I goes, I don't know these people. And he goes, that's okay. They know about you. They know about the process.
Okay.
And I go, but what am I going to say? So we worked together. We kind of like haphazardly did a little script, and it was just so painful. It was so painful. And I joke about it that people gave me $20, $50 because they felt sorry for me. I mean,
they still gave you money. That's great.
I fumbled my way a lot, but I fumbled my way a lot, but probably on the third week, then I started to get better. I'm like, oh, this is what this means. And then I got paired with a bigger team, on a fundraising team subsequently later. But the other challenge was that there was this other um, executive, high profile guy who was also interested in running for the seat. And it was so funny because we had somewhat parallel careers. I was on the school board for Round Rock. He was on the school board for another school board there in the district. We both worked at the comptroller's office. The only thing, I was mid-management and he was at executive level. And of course, he had more connections to money than I did. And so Robert from Annie's List calls me, hey, because we just got word that this guy is planning to run for office for the Democratic seat. And I'll go, what? He goes, yeah. And Robert was always very melancholy, and he was like this big 6'5" guy, large guy. So I mean, just his presence alone was very intimidating. And then he goes, you need to talk to him. We don't need a primary. Your time would be wasted in a primary, and we don't have the money to raise to be in a primary. We need to raise the money for you to win. And I was like, oh, well, aren't you going to call him? He goes, oh, no, that's your job.
That's what I would have said to him. Like, so you're going to go handle that for me, right? He's like, no, you are. And they're like, oh, great. Another thing I have to do.
And he actually said, and I think it is true. He goes, that'll be the most difficult call that you will make, because if you can get him not to run, then you have an open path. And of course, raising money is the other one. But and of course, he was very well liked, very well respected, just a great guy. I mean, he and I were friends. That's just it. We were friends. So I called him like, hey, Jesse, like, I heard word on the street that you're thinking of running. And he goes, yeah. And I goes, well, if you haven't heard, I'm also in the game. And then he quickly said, well, how would he say? I already have 25,000 committed. Oh, wow. Well, that's great. I goes, well, I have Annie's List on my side. So then you start bluffing each other. And I was so nervous inside, but I'll again, like I said, when I was on the school board, my focus was education. When I was, kind of in the initial stages of running for office, my thing was, how do I win? How do I win? What's the next step to get me to the win? And so, and then he goes, well, and I said, well, here's the thing, Jesse, I'm all in. I'm going to go in. I already have Annie's List. I've already been talking to folks. I've also been raising money. I'm pretty sure I can get to the 25K in no time, or something to that effect. And then he just paused and said, let me think about it. Call me back. And it was like 3-4 days. So I said, okay, I'll call him back.
You're like, no, call him back.
And I did. And he goes, because again, I had no idea. I mean, I really thought he was going to run. I mean, by all intents and purposes, I would say he had a better chance than I did. And so then he goes, well, I thought about it. I'm going to go ahead and withdraw, not going to run, but give me a few days to talk to my donors. And I said, fair enough. He goes, and I think I had called him like on a Monday or Tuesday. He said, give me till Friday. And then after that, it's all yours. Okay. All right. Well, you know what? I really appreciate it. I want your support. Now, could I count on your $25,000 that you've raised, to send over my way? I even asked him for those $25,000. And it was more of a symbolic gesture. And he goes, yeah, I'll see if I can get it to you. Of course, he never did. But to me, there was strength in asking for that. And to me, that was a win. Versus just letting that number sit on the table, because he knew that I had listened and I was serious about what was on the table.
Yes. Oh my God, Diana. So you run for office, you have the backing of obviously the party, you win. So there's so much that I want to talk about. I'm probably gonna have to have you back, because there's so much here about your story. And as I think about this moment in the history of our country and our community, how important it is. Like you mentioned that the Latino population is massive in Texas, but the leadership in government doesn't reflect that. And I think about what you just said about like, it's actually, you have to have relationships, you have to raise money. If you don't already have money, it's really hard to run and to do this. And it requires your full attention. And I think about all those things that would prevent someone from even saying, I could even do that, because that's a lot of work and I don't know anyone, or I know some people, but everybody. And what are the chances? What if I do that and I don't win? I've sacrificed all these things. Like I'm thinking of all the stories that we probably all tell ourselves about why we didn't be the one to run. And so I'm just curious for you, you know, running for office and then you win and then you're in office. Are you helping other people trying to run? Like, you know, what is happening with the community at that time? And I'm sure it meant a tremendous amount to have you become, you know, a state representative, and what that meant for the community. Like, tell me more about that part when you're in office and the community sees you, because you said you were the first woman of color, first Latina to have the seat.
Right. No, I mean, it was a historic win. So we did make history in Williamson County as a female and a person of color, Latina, to be elected in Williamson County, because like I said, it was a you know, a majority Republican conservative stronghold. But that was also showing the dynamics of how the demographics have been changing. So I'm in office, and with any freshman in office, you're drinking water out of a, you know, fire hydrant. So because in Texas, you're in office the legislature convenes every biennium, and you're in office 140 days. So there's obviously a very limited time to pass, you know, meaningful legislation. And I told my staff, when I picked my staff, I had my campaign manager who was just amazing. I said, Jen, I need to find, you know, folks. And he goes, the only rookie on this team is going to be me. So I want seasoned, directors, which were all younger than me. They were in their 20s. They were running my life. And I was kind of like, wow, they're so resourceful. They are so smart and resourceful. They're like amazing. I was just in awe of their energy, and I could not have been as successful without the team that I had. And so with that, it's like 140 days, and we had already been, even during the campaign, we were asking people, what do you want to see changed if Maldonado gets elected? So we already had something already to work with, but then we quickly polled and reached out to constituents. And because I had been elected, there was a lot of people coming to the office and a lot of people calling in. And so we took advantage of using that like a little polling survey to ask, what do you want to see change? What do you want to see change? And education obviously continued to be the top issue with regards to jobs as well. So we quickly formed, okay, what are our issues? You know, which are how are we going to file legislation, and, you know, and what are the issues that we're going to go with? And we worked really fast because, again, I was one of 20, maybe 22 freshmen. So we have 150 House members. And in that year, we had the most amount of freshmen. So we're all jockeying for position, you know, because freshmen are never heard, you know, because you have all the senior leaders that get the attention and the spotlight, and rightfully so. So I was working towards, okay, how do I jockey for position within my cohort, in addition to the whole House, in addition to looking at certain chair people that are instrumental in helping my legislation pass. Now, I will say that something that was super, super helpful was that I worked at the state controller's office. So I knew how policy worked, where my other freshman cohorts had no idea. So that was my advantage. And then having been on the school board was also another advantage. So now all that sweat equity that I had done in the prior years now
Yes.
was, like a snowball of opportunities and to take advantage. And now it didn't guarantee me a win, but at least I knew I had those advantages on my side. Um, so we would, I think in the end, I filed 88 pieces of legislation. And
Wait, Deanna,
yeah,
wait, hold on. 88 pieces.
yes.
And hold on. So now this is okay, demystify this for me. When you
Uh-huh.
say you introduced 88 pieces of legislation, who are you writing it? Who's writing it? How does this happen? How does a piece of
Yes.
legislation happen where then you get to introduce it?
Mhm. So say if you want to say, hey, I want to make sure that the speed limit during this very busy
Yes.
corridor
Yes,
is
very
X
practical.
amount of speed.
I
Yeah.
can see that. Yep.
So something as simple as that, then you have to go to, there's attorneys in the legislature that's all they do. They reconstruct normal language into legal language. And then they work with your office to say, is this what it means? Like you go
Mm,
through different processes of the approval, but you have to work really fast because in the legislature, and again, I'm talking only Texas, around 6 to 7,000 pieces of legislature gets filed by everybody.
it's a lot of competing interests.
There's a lot of jockeying.
Yes. Yes.
And when you're a freshman, you're pretty much a nobody. And you have to laugh and kind of know, like, hey, I know where I stand, but that doesn't mean I'm invisible.
Yes. Still
So
gonna
they'll do
try. I'm
that.
still gonna try.
Yeah,
I'm still
yeah,
gonna, yes.
exactly. So they do that, and then once it's like now formal, then my next job, like this is when the real job gets like, oh, I have a piece of legislation. So each piece of legislation has to have 4 co-authors in
Okay.
order for it to be official. So as I would get something, I was on the House floor, and I, 3/4 of my legislation, 3/4 of my authors were Republican.
Okay. And
So
is that intentional? Was that intentional, Deanna?
intentional, intentional,
You're like,
because
of course it was. I'm a politician.
geez, that's funny. But no, it was intentional because I served in a conservative district. Even though I was a
Yes.
Democrat, I knew where I was serving.
Yes.
And I was the only Democrat that won in a non-Democratic majority and the only Latina in a non-Latino majority. So I knew I had very, very little wiggle room.
Okay.
But at the same time, all my work had been about education. That's a neutral issue. It had been about safe communities. That's a neutral issue. It had been about jobs. That's a neutral issue. Now, while I am pro-choice, I didn't lead with that because I knew when and where to position that as
Yes.
well. So, and while a lot of my colleagues did do social issues, I stuck to the neutral issues that I knew that would improve and build communities so that they could thrive. And
Yes.
and that has been my lifelong work of moving things forward. So when I got the authors, then the next job was to go to the calendars committee and say, let me say the calendars. No, no, it's to the committee. So say if it was the committee on transportation, like, hey, can you hear my bill? Can you hear my bill? And like, so we had to get it scheduled to get it in committee, presented in committee. And then I had to, also lobby them again. Can you get it out of the committee? So I have to get
Oh,
it out
it's
of committee.
constant
And then
lobbying.
I had to get it on calendars so I can read the bill on the floor. So then that they can vote on it. And
Yes.
once it voted on the House side, the process starts over on the Senate side.
Wait, so then where do
Yes.
lobbyists come in? Like, where do lobbyists, what do they do then?
So if I have a lobbyist who is representing a construction company that, builds roads, or does the checks the speed, and they have like the technology on speed and stuff like that, well, they're going to say, oh, Representative Maldonado, that's a good bill. So what they do, they also talk to other legislators to say, Representative Maldonado has a good bill. We really like for you to be in favor of it. Or if I were to entertain a bill to say, hey, let's use recycled material on roads versus the asphalt, and the lobbyists for the asphalt companies like, no, you're going to put it out of business. They would say, don't pass her bill. Or they would come to me, it's like, hey, don't you want to remove that bill? Like, this is what it's going to do to the economy, this and that. So they're also paying attention as to the businesses that they represent, if it basically hurts their bottom line.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So then it goes to the Senate. And of course, I have to go to the senators and say, please, can you present my bill? Because I can't do it. They have to do it. So I have to find a senator who will present it and push it through. And it takes shorter time in some cases. And then once they approve it, then it comes back to the House floor, to the House chamber, and then we'll pass it for final approval. That's just one bill.
And that's one bill. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're talking about running for office and talking about being in office. Let's talk a little bit more about candidate school and how you help.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that oftentimes people will throw their name in the ring, but they are not really prepared. Like, they haven't thought through, well, what is my platform? What am I running on? And have gone through that kind of process. And then you talked a little bit about there are obviously some barriers and obstacles that we believe exist so that we feel like we can't even run for office. So tell me more about candidate school. Who's like the ideal person to enroll in candidate school, which is your course, and who's the ideal person to seek your support?
Well, I mean, obviously I did the candidate school for women, because in Congress, I believe there's 28% representation of women in Congress. In state legislatures across the nation, I believe the percentage is around 33%.
But Dana, what do you think? Why do you think that is? Like, other than the fact that we know that women, let's be honest, the statistics don't lie, we outperform men in high school, in college, every single educational level, we outperform. And then in companies, we're not as much in the C-suite. And then in government, we're not represented. What is it? What is this about being an elected official that we have this, there's this huge systemic barrier?
Well, and it is because of generations of representation that it's been white male representation, whether it's in the corporate sector or in politics. I mean, what was it? 1920 was the first time that women could vote. And even then, it was probably another decade that women of color could vote. So it's been this hierarchical, empowerment that has existed, that it does take time. And unfortunately, too much time and decades to dismantle, that layer. And to me, it's relatability. It's so important to see more women in positions of power, in positions of leadership, because we know that we can solve problems. We know that we collaborate more. We know that we see problems in more ways than one. We don't see them linearly. We see them in different ways, and it's about asking your best friend or your network group, like, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem, or calling your best friend and say, I don't know how to solve this. Can you help me? And I in my observation with male leadership is, it's like, it has to be one way. They're not as collaborative, and there's a lot of ego riding on it as well. The positions are,
Dana, like, we know very well there's a lot of ego running right now. We know. Yep.
Yeah, we have the two.
Doing things just for ego and power.
Yeah,
Just
ego,
I
and
have
it's a
power.
lot of self-benefit,
Yeah.
entitlement. And when women are in power, we think about the community, we think about the public at large. Because if I want, to have, my daughter, my granddaughter have safe parks. Well, guess what? I don't want it only for her. I want it for
Everyone.
all other families. And that's how women do think and do problem solve. And so because of the numbers right now that exist in the state level and in Congress, it's about also, and with the national chaos and uncertainty with politics right now at the national level, is like, I really want to do something about it. And how I do it is do it at the local level, because there's over 500,000 elected positions across the nation. And 96% of those are at the local level. So there is an opportunity for women, start at the local level. I mean, I did, and even then it keeps you busy, but it keeps you also grounded to where your problem solving is contained into a certain area versus state or federal. And once you
Deanna,
get those
I
successes,
even seeing here in so I live close to Boston, even seeing the Boston City Council races. They're intense.
yes.
That's local office, but it's a big city, and the amount of resources and money you have to raise, the people you need to get behind you, and all the work, the grassroots work that goes into that. I look at, like, me as I'm not interested in running for office, although I have friends who probably want to. And I say, look, I will support you in the back, but I will never run, but I'll support you in the back, because I'm all for that. But just to see the amount of effort and energy that goes into it. And then I've had friends that have run, and to see them not win, and the devastation of, like, what that means to them. And it's really hard sometimes, because
it is. Yeah. No, and it is, and that's the thing, and that's why with the candidate school, there's 3 tenets of managing money, policy, and power. And I developed 20 daily lesson plans around and modules around those categories. And with the money in of itself, it's your personal money. How are you handling finances? What is your feeling about money? What is your belief about money? I get to the core of the holistic candidate, because there's a lot of other wonderful campaign schools that is the campaign in of itself. But my experience when I ran for office, like, I was a commodity. It was almost like I was invisible. I was used as a thing to get to the win. And again, being a Latina, being somebody who didn't come from generational wealth, like, I'm thrusted into this environment that is so alien to me, but at the same time, I am so scared of failing that all I do is move forward.
Yeah, you just take the next step, because you have to want to win. Yeah, you want to win.
Yeah, and so to me, I would say the first part is going over those daily lesson plans, especially on the money part, where it's like, are you going to, are you going to have to leave your employer? Are they going to support you while you're in office? Have you talked to your spouse? Do you have a spouse? Do you have some other forms of means? How are you going to raise money? Can you ask for money? Yeah,
practical things you have to
go. Yeah, and so once women go through those exercises, they're like, I know and wholeheartedly believe that they're going to be so much better positioned when they identify a race that they want to run for and have a better experience. Now, there's no guarantee, because that comes from voters. But the thing is, if I lose, did I give it my best? Did I give it my all? And I want you to say yes. But if I win, this information was so instrumental for me to have had the best journey and the right information come along when it presented itself. And many women don't have that. And I just see so many amazing women who have the leadership skills, who have the successes, who have that skill set, who have those attributes that are so needed in policy making and public office. But it's also about not throwing your hat in the ring without having a game plan first.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they do get discouraged and they don't run again, and they should run again.
Mm-hmm.
It's just having the right game plan in front or in advance and vetting it out. So right now, the candidate school is primed for midterm elections.
Yes.
Because I'm a person of the long game. I mean, I
Yes.
look at the long game as like, okay, midterm elections are 2026. A professional woman, and I would say like professionals who are, in their 40s, I would say, that have a career, that they've already have skills and knowledge and successes, and they can translate that into public office.
Mm-hmm.
But also knowing, how am I going to adjust, financially, career, family wise, myself, just herself, without anybody else. Like, how am I going to feel good about this? Because it's also a wellness component to the
Yes.
candidate school. And then say, if the race is in November of 2026, then I need to take the course over the summer so that I can start thinking. Exactly. And like you say, start building the team. Who's your kitchen cabinet? How am I going to raise money? How much does this race take? And you're right, Boston, the more popular and the city, the more vibrant and economic and robust the city is, the more challenging the races become.
Yes. And in Boston, there are quite a few of, people of color who run, obviously, because the city is very diverse, and you see that. And I almost like, can we sprinkle this everywhere in every city? It's energizing to see so many people of color run. And then at the same time, I'm like, oh, but we need all of you everywhere. And
yes,
it can be frustrating. I'll be honest. It's frustrating to see, not non-Boston in particular, but it's frustrating to see, like, across the nation, when you have so many, what I think are women who want to support other women and protect women's rights. And then their elected officials don't do that, but they elected them. Or because women are electing officials that are not really for their own benefit, or not acting in their own benefit. So that can be challenging. And frankly, it can be very disheartening and demoralizing. Where the problem seems so big that you're like, how could I make a dent in this?
Yeah. I mean, you're voting against your own interests. And for the life of me, I can't understand that. And again, because they only see a white male who has been in power a long time. So like, oh, I don't want to go against the grain. I mean, but the thing is, that's part of having your voice and saying, speaking your voice and saying your voice, versus having an authoritarian or a male figurehead tell you what to say and think and do. And I mean, we do have more educated women. We do have more ambitious women who are doing great things. And, if we could just pull 10% of that population, and, that's just a snippet of it. And imagine how much better our nation and our world would be if we were close to parity within our own state governments and municipalities across the nation, across the world.
Wait, Dana, so what would you say, before we wrap up, what would you say to those listening who have thought about running, but they're like, no, it'd be too much, or they're like, the problems are too big, or I don't know if I could do it? What would you say to them? First, I know you would tell them to do candidate school, but what would you say to them to maybe get them to take just the next right step?
I would say it's like, identify your why, because the reason that you're in this quandary is because you believe in a better world and you believe in a better community for yourself. And there's more. And deep down, you have the ability to be a conduit of change. So write down your why. this is why I know that we could have better schools because of this. So get on your why, go through that discovery phase of answering those questions. And again, the candidate school will take you through that discovery and exploration phase, because it could come out to say, hey, I got my why, but I also know that these other things, I'm not ready for it yet.
Mhm.
Or it will take them to the discovery phase to say, now I got my answers to X, Y, and Z to strengthen my why. But the
Yes.
fact that if women are asking that is a call to action,
Mhm.
that staying put is even worse.
Yes, staying put is even worse. And I love
Mhm.
how the candidate school takes them through a process where even if the answer is no, maybe it's not right now. And
Correct. It's
oh,
there.
now I know what I need to do though to be
Mhm.
ready. And so
Mhm.
here is what I can do to be more ready. I love that.
Right. Yeah. And if they can also identify, hey, I can be a campaign director, or I can be a field director, or I can
Get some
be,
experience.
yeah, go be on the team and help a candidate. So there's
Yes.
different ways of how they can benefit from this.
And learning more and feeling a little bit more comfortable with this,
Yeah.
like a big race if they want to enter a big race. Dan,
Uh-huh.
tell us how we can find you, especially if we want to join the candidate school and work with you directly. How can we find you and work with you?
Yes, thank you. So if you go to dianamaldonado.com, the candidate school is there. You'll get an introduction, a little bit of a description of what it does, and be ready to take the journey, identifying your candidate identity about managing money, policy, and power, and finding that alignment for you. And you'll go in there and register, and it's a self-paced course, so you take it at your own pace. If you want to do it in the evenings, you want to do it in the weekends, you'll get a daily lesson plan. But the thing is, to get a daily lesson plan, then you, at the end of the day, you'll go through the exercise, because it may take a couple of days for you to kind of come, to kind of fully vet out an issue or an item. But at the end of the day, you'll have a fully thought out, you know, combination of lesson plans along with your workbook that you
Mhm.
can reference. So it's not just one and done. You will reference it as time comes closer to run for office, or to say, you know what, let me go back to this if I'm going to, if I'm at crossroads of doing that.
Mhm.
And I do have, because of its International Women's Day, I do have a discount code that I would like to share.
Yes,
And
share away.
you're the first, uh, you
Share
know,
away.
group that I'm going to do it with. It's Women 150. So the course is a combination of valued of over $10,000, because we brought in expertise. We did a lot of research on it. But we are offering it for $795. But right now I'm offering a $150 discount,
Amazing.
because it is so important for women to get it now. And if they want to take it over the course of the summer, identify, they want to do it on weekends, I want to make sure that we offer it to them. And I'll send you the code too. We can put on the link and all that.
Yes, no, I will put all of that in the show notes, the link to the website, candidate school, the discount code, all of that will be in the show notes for the episode. Deanna, I just want to thank you so much for being here with me today. I feel like you're such an inspiration and I love the work you're doing. I think it's challenging work, but it's energizing work and it's purposeful work. And so I just want to thank you for doing this, especially as we head into midterm elections next year. So important the work you're doing. People forget that it's this work that has the ripple effect that then produces big results.
You
So
start
thank you
now.
so
You start
yeah.
now. Thank you, Adavi. I appreciate it so much. And congratulations on your work and the podcast,
Oh,
getting
thank
the work
you.
out of all these amazing women out there.
Oh, thank you so much.